Hello, everyone, and welcome to Real Conspiracies Episode 9, Gravity Falls and the Cipher Egregore. I'm your host, PJ Williams, and on this episode, my guest and I do something that's a little bit new for Real Conspiracies. Instead of diving into a movie or a video game, we talk about a TV series. And if that doesn't sound super interesting right off the bat, and maybe you haven't seen Gravity Falls, I implore you to stick around. Not only do we dive into the hidden messages and occult symbolism in a Disney kids TV show, but we tell the story of how a 12-year-old show is now manifesting itself in the real world. This episode goes places that you won't expect, so I hope you enjoy it. Now on to the show. All right, so today we have my friend Jehssye joining Real Conspiracies. Jehssye, if you guys are familiar, is kind of the mom of our Discord group, of the Conspiracy Pilled Discord group. She's known as Ice Mom. She's been on Conspiracy Pilled Unhinged before. This is her first time on Real Conspiracies. Welcome in, Jehssye. How you doing?
Doing good. Excited to talk about everything today.
Yeah, so you suggested to me covering Gravity Falls, and I realized that I'm only passingly familiar with this. I'm more familiar with the meme and the imagery and things like that. I'm familiar with the pictures of Cipher Bill and clips that I've seen, and mostly it's that meme that everybody's seen. Oh, this is worthless. Like I didn't realize that came from Gravity Falls before. But you watched this show back a while ago, and I'm just getting caught up on it now. So before we get into what it is, like, when did you watch Gravity Falls? What's your opinions on it? Why did you want to cover it on Real Conspiracies today?
So obviously we have kids similar ages. Like, my oldest is 10, the youngest is 6. We watched this back in 2016, and I feel like I'm really torn about it because it's well made. It catches your attention, and it has a decent storyline, but it's so caught up with the occult, cryptids, Illuminati. And when I brought up doing this for Real Conspiracy, it's just talking about the idea, me and Ian went back and we watched just the first 3 episodes, and each one runtime 24
about 22 minutes I think per runtime, if you get it without the ads.
Yeah. So but even with that night, it was just spiritual warfare in our house. The dogs couldn't settle down, the kids couldn't settle down, and I had to stay up later and just pray and rebuke something that tried to come into the house just because of the first 3 episodes. And that's not even
where it gets weird yet.
No,
yeah.
It's towards the end of season 1, and it was only 2 seasons. It's only 41 episodes.
Right. Yeah. So you told me about this show, and you told me about your experience before I'd even started watching it. And I will say, I get it. I've had so many people tell me about this show and be like, look, it's about cryptids. It's got conspiracy stuff. It references Twin Peaks, which we'll get into in a minute. It's one of my personal favorite shows. And yet with all of that, it still falls, I think, very clearly on some kind of dark side. I think everybody thinks if it's shining a light at conspiracies and cryptids and things like that, that it must be good in some way. But I think there's a real dark side to conspiracy topics, and that dark side comes from the people who kind of delve into this world and then come back with an occult knowledge and are maybe wittingly or unwittingly delving into dark arts and magical practices. And I want to make the case through this episode that that's exactly what this show does, is that it kind of trains kids in the way of the occult, and then culminates in something that came out just this year, even though the show's been canceled, or not canceled, but finished for 9 years now, that is leading kids into quite literally occult practices, magical practices. So we're going to get into all that. But before we get into it, and again, I like the show. I want to also clarify. I actually have, from what I've watched, I enjoy the show. It reminds me of Rick and Morty, which I'm a fan of. It reminds me of Inside Job, which I'm a fan of. But it's weird to me because I think I would watch this on an adult animation level. And then I'm realizing that this was geared for very young kids. At least originally, they kind of tried to alter that as it went along. But it's almost like the show grew up as the kids grew up instead of it being, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. And it does, because like time actually progresses in the show, which is another interesting point. Not a lot of shows like have that progression of time. Like they kind of have it like frozen, like The Simpsons just nobody
Yeah,
ever
where
ages.
Lisa's always what 7, or Bart's always 7, and Lisa's always like 8 or 9 or whatever. Yeah, forever. Yep.
Well, and that's the thing. I really enjoyed the show, but it's like when we first watched it in 2016 versus now being 2024, we've had a lot of spiritual growth ourselves, and now I'm convicted, and I just don't feel like we should watch it.
Yeah.
So it's like shining that light so people can make that a well-informed decision for themselves.
Sure.
Because, like I said, it is entertaining.
It's very entertaining. And for people who are not familiar what it is, it's an animated TV show created by Alex Hirsch. It was created for the Disney Channel, later moved to Disney XD, which is like the preteen, teenage kind of version of Disney. The series premiered originally on June 15th, 2012, and it ran all the way till February 15th, 2016. Like you said, it only consisted of 2 seasons, 20 episodes for the first season, 21 episodes for the second season, 41 episodes in total. And it spun out into a lot of different stuff. And we'll come back to the side spin-off type stuff. But what it's about essentially is a story that follows Dipper and Mabel Pines. They're 2 12-year-olds. They're twins from Piedmont, California, who then go and stay with their grunkle, Stan, which I like that. I was like, grunkle, what's a grunkle? The grand uncle. I guess it comes, so much of this, we can talk about this now, but so much of this is autobiographical for the creator, Alex Hirsch. Yes. He is a twin. He had an aunt who was a great aunt who called herself his Granty. So he kind of took that. He had a grandfather named Stan who he never says was a Freemason, but it hints at it. And Stan is definitely a Freemason in this show.
Oh, yeah. There's so much of it.
Yeah. And this show takes place in a fictional town called Gravity Falls in the fictional county of Roadkill County, Oregon. And their uncle, Grunkle, Stan, runs a mystery shack, which is this tourist trap. It's this little, gift shop full of weird occult items. And this is one of the things that you and me had talked about is you said, how do you want to cover this? You're like, it's 41 episodes and there is an insane amount of conspiracy topics, cryptids, symbolism. Generally in this show, I'll take a movie, and this is the first time doing a TV show, so let me know if you guys like this and if it works out, if you want to see more. But generally what I'll do is I'll go through a movie, and in a 2-hour movie, I can, in an hour and a half, go through pretty much all of the major symbolism of like, here's this thing that happens, and here's this symbol hidden, and here's the symbol of Ishtar hidden here, and references to Baphomet here. If we did that for this, we would have a whole podcast in and of itself. Because every 20-minute episode, I could literally spend an hour breaking down the symbols scene by scene. Because just in the first scene of the Mystery Shack is like pentagrams and pyramids and all kinds of weird symbolism just everywhere. 8 balls, magic 8 balls and stuff like that.
Yeah, like the 8-ball thing is just everywhere. It's so weird. Yeah. And like there's so much like, unless it's one of those you can rewatch it and find something new in the background each time.
Oh, yeah. And the fans are rabid about doing this. In fact, there's things that come into play later season 2, and they'll go back and rewatch the show and find that was being teased in the background for episodes or seasons or whatever. So, like, there's so much. I want to come back to the symbolism later, and I definitely want to come back to the hidden messages and hidden characters later because there's really in-depth work that went into this. But the show starts off, to get back into what it's about, it starts off with them going to the Mystery Shack, and his grunkle says, go put up some signs in the woods to Dipper, his great nephew, and Dipper finds this mysterious grimoire hidden inside of a fake tree in the woods. And this grimoire shows how all these weird, dark secrets that are in the woods surrounding this small town. And in fact, I was going to bring this up later, but on the cover of the grimoire is a 6-fingered hand with the number 3. So already, if you're a conspiracy person, you're going, okay, 5 minutes into the first episode, we get a Nephilim reference, we get occult symbolism throughout all of the first, 2 minutes, and then we get the number 3, this prominent occult number on top of a Nephilim hand. I mean, what's your thoughts, like, going just through the first, because you rewatched the first 3 episodes, like, what was your thoughts just going through the first 2 to 5 minutes of this show?
As soon as I saw the 6 fingers, I'm like, oh, PJ wrote it. No, but it's
I am not a Nephilim just because I have a red beard, but yeah, continue.
No, it's the 6 fingers. No, but it's like I wrote some stuff down, and it's just like, it's just all the occult. Like, they're already hinting at Bill Cipher in the first episode. Again, just like look at the background. You see a triangle. You see like a kind of an allusion to like an eye in the stained glass. And again, like just all of the occult stuff that's just hanging around in the back that if you know, you know. It's like one of those.
Right. And again, we could go through so much. I mean, there's even like a goat, like this like satanic goat hanging out and all this stuff. It's just everywhere.
There's a weird goat. And then like there's a character that doesn't get brought up until like late in season 1 that you can see in the background
at the end of the first episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
You talking about the time traveler? I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah. So I wrote time traveler in the background on episode 3.
Yeah.
So like, but that's not a plot point until later on, but it's like one of those things once you go back and rewatch it, you're like, oh, he was already doing the thing.
Well, there's a lot of detail put in the show, and I also think that's important to bring up is because when Alex Hirsch wrote this show, he said before he even started that he knew the beginning, the middle, and the end. So with a lot of times they're like, here's a premise, we're going to play through episodes and see what comes out of it. And it seems very intentional from the beginning that there was a plot to go from the opening to Weird Mageddon. There was like always a plan. Bill Cipher was always a plan. And Alex Hirsch is really, he doesn't like to answer questions. And that's makes me think of Freemasonry and occult and like the dodging of questions type stuff. So I couldn't find anything that like said he was for sure a Freemason or anything like that. He's probably not. He doesn't strike me as one, but he definitely dabbles in the occult in some pretty interesting ways, and we'll come back to that. But yeah,
well, and it's like one of the interviews that I saw, just like a part. I think I might have sent it to you. I don't know, but it's where somebody asked if like Gravity Falls was done. And the way he created the ending, it doesn't have to be. He was quoted saying that he likes to leave like something to chew on, something that's not completed. So if he wanted to revisit something in this show or a topic that he could, and we kind of see that with his newest release this year, which I know we'll talk about later, but like he left that thread there so we could pull on it and so he can attach it to something and continue doing what he wants to do.
Really quickly, before I watched even a single episode of this show, you told me about it and I said to you, oh, this is Twin Peaks for kids, right? And I think you told me you've never seen Twin Peaks.
Never seen it. Never heard of Twin Peaks. Never seen it.
Okay. So. Even though you haven't seen Twin Peaks, I'm just going to prove to you that after you described it to me and I said, this is Twin Peaks for kids, without ever having seen an episode, I was 100% right. In fact, they have so many nods to Twin Peaks in the show. These are just screenshots side by side. You've got the Gravity Falls next to the Twin Peaks opening scene. You've got the bird on a branch. You've got the club One-Eyed Jack that shows up. You've got the owls that show up, the waterfalls. At one point, Dipper's turned into a block of wood, just like how, I can't remember if it was Audrey or no, it was, I can't remember her name, but the Asian girl gets turned into a knob on a dresser drawer, like a wooden knob. We've got, the Mystery Shack looks like the shack in Twin Peaks. We've got drawings, and then the most obvious reference, and I don't know what scene this comes from the show. I didn't see that episode, but it is the Red Room from Twin Peaks. It's got the same floor, the same curtains. It's a very clear reference. And even in the Book of Bill, again, we'll talk about it later, but there's a whole page dedicated to David Lynch inside of the book. So it's as much as this show, according to Alex Hirsch, is autobiographical, which it is also an ode to David Lynch's work and to Twin Peaks. So I was already kind of a fan a little bit, going like, I'm a big fan of Twin Peaks. And I again, not a show I would want kids to watch, and I don't think this show really is for kids either, but at least the imagery and stuff like that was interesting to me for that. So let's talk about the critical reception of this. This got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is wild. And I'm not saying it doesn't deserve it. It's well done. No,
but like, how often do you come across things that you're like, oh, this is amazing, and then people are like, eh. Right. I mean, to get 100% on is Rotten Tomatoes like all like public, like?
No, so there's two things. There's critics and then there's the public. So the public is like the popcorn score, and they might have changed that name recently. But 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes means critics. Means what the critics gave it. Yeah.
Which, I mean, to get 100 from the critics, like, it's in the title. They're critics, and they gave this 100%.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. The website's critical consensus, and this is the consensus of all the critics that they kind of boil down, says Gravity Falls' warm humor and bright performance elevate this children's cartoon to a show for all ages. And that's what I keep coming back to in this, is like, I was like, well, maybe it's not actually marketed for little kids, and it is. So Brian Lowry of Variety says the show has a breezy quality that should play to kids and tickle some twinges of nostalgia among their parents. Matt Fowler from IGN said it's a quirky and gently twisted heartwarmer for all ages. Smart, satirical, sweet. Gravity Falls is a one-of-a-kind gem. And IndieWire's Michael Schneider said Gravity Falls is a kids' show so dense with mythology, pop culture jokes, Easter eggs, and mystery that grown-ups were often more invested.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I would say that it's definitely, I think it's more geared for grown-ups, but the fact remains that this is definitely marketed and geared for kids and put on a show during a prime daytime slot for children to watch while their parents are working and all those things. Any thoughts on those reviews?
I mean, they're right. Like the part where it's like a twisted, what was it? It's something about being
twisted heartwarmer for all ages, according to IGN.
And it is, because they play on the dynamic of them being twins. They play on the family relationships. Like, what it kind of tugs on your heart, because it's like, well, what would you do?
Right.
Would you choose family or would you choose this? And it really plays with your emotions, and it's really well done. And the storytelling is just absolutely amazing. So, and you can get sucked in really fast. Yeah.
Yeah. So in this cast of characters, there's a lot of interesting people. There's Dipper and Mabel, which again, based on Alex and his twin sister Ariel. Stan is based on their grandfather. He wears a fez like a Shriner. His hat, they had a symbol on it at one point.
Right.
And apparently, we can come back to this. I want to talk about the Disney censorship in a minute, but his hat had some weird symbol on it, and they changed it halfway through, or the beginning of season 2. They just like erased it. And I'm pretty sure if you go back and watch this on Disney Plus, which I didn't, I watched it in another way, that they removed it in older episodes too. And according to Alex and I think according to Disney, it was too close to a actual Muslim symbol, and they wanted to erase it because they didn't want it to be offensive. But what it looked like to me was some type of weird fish thing mixed with a crescent moon. And in fact, if you look, there's a rug on a wall in the shack that reads the Royal Order of the Holy Mackerel, which is a very Freemasonic Shriner sounding thing. So if you didn't get the fact that the guy wearing the fez hat with all of the secrets is definitely a Freemason and part of some like secret order of the Freemasons, it's pretty clear. I've saw people arguing online about it. It's like, I'm pretty clear, guys. Pretty clear.
Yeah. Well, and then at one point they claimed that it was like a clam, which, I mean, it's a very like harsh shape with like a fishtail. I don't know about a clam.
But it looks like a fish with a crescent moon. I mean, they said it was an amalgamation of different, at least Alex Hirsch, who's always kind of dodgy on the question, said it was an amalgamation of different symbols. So it wasn't basically to avoid copyright, I think was the point. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Do you have a favorite character in this? I mean, we got Gideon is another one, who's this weird child psychic. He's like, well, it's like you said, like, because when we were talking about it, you're like, what is Gideon? And he is actually about the twins' age. I think he's like younger. He's 10 according to the Gravity 10. Falls wiki. Yeah. Okay, so he's like roughly 2-3 years younger than them, but he has white hair and a pig nose. And a pig nose, yes. And wrinkles. He looks like an old man. He looks like an old midget. He does. He looks like a midget. But like with America, like we associate white hair with age. So unless like you're paying attention, you're like, this is really creepy. This dude's like hitting on a 12-year-old, but it's a 10-year-old who has a crush on Mabel. Yeah, before I really got into it, I saw this plot line where Gideon was trying to marry Mabel, and there was maybe a possibly arranged marriage between Stan, and I was like, is this him selling his preteen niece off to an older gentleman? And I didn't realize he's 10, but he doesn't look 10. He doesn't look 10. It's still like, if you didn't know that, it looks like this weirdo selling of a child to an older occultist, weird stuff going on. But I was wrong. That doesn't actually happen in the show. No, there's still weird stuff. But favorite character, I love Mabel because she's so quirky. And she kind of
is the comic relief at times, but just like seeing her devotion to Dipper and her uncle and not wanting to have to pick a side. That's what really tugged on my heartstrings. But like, definitely she's probably my favorite just because she's just so quirky and funny.
Yeah, Mabel is definitely like the best comic relief in the show. And they got the dumb character Seuss, who's kind of likable, and Stan's got some funny lines, and Dipper's whatever.
Like, he's not bad, but
no,
like he's just an overthinker, like to a T.
Yeah.
And but I would probably say Mabel, then probably Grunkle Stan, just because he's old and grumpy, and I find that funny.
Right. And I would hazard a guess that if you polled Gravity Falls fans, you would find that one character stands far above the rest as a favorite character. Has the most lore around him, sells the most merchandise, has the most tattoos, real life followings, and that's Bill Cipher, which is this character that comes in, and we can go through the major plot lines here in a second, but he's a character that comes in at the end of season 1 and then becomes the main villain throughout season 2 and the focal point of the show by the end. And he is a dream demon who comes in through and this is, again, if you haven't seen the show and you're wondering why I'm railing on this kids show, at one point Gideon, this 10-year-old, does a literal seance with candles and a pentagram and using an old grimoire to summon a sleep demon named Bill Cipher into the world. And like, they have to fight this demon as it possesses their Grunkle Stan and all this stuff. And then he warns the kids of this 6-fingered man before he leaves. And eventually we meet the other kind of main character of the group, which is just kind of known as Ford. I guess it's Stanley and Stanford, which are twins, which is weird.
Well, yeah. So it's like the whole twin thing. So it's like the uncles are twins. And I think it's like skipped a generation, and then it's Dipper and Mabel are also twins. Right.
And Stanford is never said to be a Nephilim, but let's talk about the 6-fingered thing really quick, right? So we've got these books, and the majority of the show is these kids trying to figure out who wrote these books. Dipper finds the first book with a number 3 on it. You eventually find out that Gideon also has a book with the number 2 on it. And when Gideon gains the second and third book, he realizes that there has to be one with number 1 on it, which is being held by Stan, Grunkle Stan. But all these books have a 6-fingered handprint on the front and are written by an unnamed author. And it's these weird grimoires with facts about cryptids, which it's like the show almost starts off as if it's going to be about cryptids. If it's going to be... Right. And all of these shows kind of do. If you've watched Fringe, if you've watched X-Files, if you've watched... I mean, even Twin Peaks to some degrees, you think it's going to be a couple of like interesting plot points here and there, and then it's got like this greater overall story with this behind the scenes ultimate demon. I mean, Twin Peaks has Bob the way that this show has Bill, which is a demon that comes into people and possesses them in their dreams and stuff like that. So definitely a similarity there. But Ford, Stanford, he has 6 fingers, and it doesn't explain why really. And go ahead.
No, I mean, like it doesn't explain it. They kind of just like write it off. They're just like, oh my gosh, he has 6 fingers. He's the author of the journals. And like, so Dipper finds the 3rd journal. It has number 3. It has the handprint and all that, which is like the most paranoid of the journals, because like on so many pages, it's don't trust anyone, beware of this, beware of that. And like, just because that's like, it's the 3rd one. So he's already made, like, Stanford has already made a deal with Bill, and now he's just paranoid to all get out. And like the first 2 are more like cryptids, and like this spot has a lot of weird anomalies, and this is what I'm noticing. But the 3rd one, that Dipper, and it's like, for some reason, like Dipper really takes that to heart. He's like, I can't trust anyone, not even my twin.
Right. Yeah, and I think that there's like a big reason for this, and I don't know if we want to go through some of the plot first, or if you had anything else to say, because again, I think what we want to do with this episode is not try to give you a point by point of everything that happens. If you haven't seen the show, we want to go through the major symbolism, and I actually have a theory on how this show actually extends outside of the 2 seasons to become something bigger and kind of manifest in our real world, which is what we're building towards. But in this show, again, there's the 3 journals. And there's all these weird episodes that are like, here's, what is it, gnomes in the first episode, and zombies, and we've got mimics, and like all these things. And it's kind of an X-Files type show in a way, all the way through the first season, which culminates in the summoning of Bill Cipher. And then the second season, we've got the feds moving in, and we've got, we basically realize that Stan's dark secret is that that he has a twin brother, and that his twin brother was pushed into another portal, into another dimension. And in this other dimension, he meets Bill Cipher. And that's why by the time you get to that third journal, he's already made deals with Bill Cipher. He thought they were friends. They had some type of relationship that goes beyond platonic that we'll talk about in just a moment. And throughout all of this, you get Stan gathering these 3 journals back, and then opening a portal to the other side and bringing his brother back. And through this, things get weird, and eventually another portal is opened up through trickery and possession by Bill Cipher himself that allows Bill and all of his weirdo demonic buddies from some other realm to infest this world. And this is where we get Weirdmageddon, this big 3-part big 3-part finale of the entire show. Do you want to talk about Weirdmageddon for a minute? Because I want to come back to Florida and the Nephilim thing, but I want to make sure we lay the groundwork for the major things that happen for this to make sense.
Right. Well, Weirdmageddon, it's so all of the twins are back: Dipper, Mabel, Stanford, and Stanley. Mm-hmm. And it's them trying to rely on each other, but then the Grunkles have unresolved issues and trauma that they don't want to touch. And the kids are still kind of Dipper siding with Stanford, and Mabel's trying to make peace with everybody. So in Weirdmageddon, it's showing one of the major plot points is Mabel going out, dealing with a unicorn who turns out to be an asshole, which I thought was funny.
I was just reading another book where the unicorns are assholes. I don't know why that's a trope now, but I kind of think it's hilarious.
I don't know, but the unicorn was an asshole. She had to get part of its mane so they could conjure up a protective barrier around the mystery shack and keep everybody safe. So you can see finally she shows that she's capable and she's willing to do anything for her family. And you can see Bill Cipher trying to chip away at the unity that they have and just turn everything into a living hell. I mean, Stanford was dragged into the nightmare realm, which is just full of weird demonic creatures that he brings into their realm, their dimension, to take over and all of that. And it just gets so much more occultic. Mm-hmm. And now we're talking they're conjuring up a spell. I can't remember if they made this mixture in a cauldron or what they did to create the
But they're
barrier.
definitely doing occult magic rituals. And it's literally showing kids do occult magic rituals, chanting in Latin, backwards speaking, and all that stuff for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and they're not trying to hide it.
No.
They're trying to show that, hey, it has its place. It can protect you. It can do this. It can do that.
It's making the case for right-hand magic path for two young children. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And it kind of plays on certain tones in Revelation, the water turning red, which alludes to, the Euphrates going red and running with blood. It goes to just the chaos that will ensue. Bill and his demonic friends trying to become the masters of all the humans and take advantage of that and do things their way, which is just bringing that nightmare realm into theirs. And, just calling, it's the classic, good getting called evil and evil being called good. Blurring
the lines between the two.
Yeah. And the only way they can figure out how to, spoilers, if you haven't already figured that one out.
This is the second episode in a row where I did this, right? My guest was oh, by the way, spoilers. I'm I think, let me just put it this way. If you're watching Real Conspiracies, expect that if I'm going to go through the symbolism of a show, I'm spoiling the living crap out of everything. So if you haven't seen it, I am spoiling it. And I always think that's a given, but maybe I should just start putting that in the front of the show.
Yeah, at the beginning. So Sayer, there's going to be spoilers. If you haven't figured that out already.
Yeah, he was mad at me for the Lego movie one. He's like, I haven't even seen it yet, and there's spoilers. I'm like, what did you expect me to do?
For real. But like, the only way they can figure out how to defeat Bill is drawing this big pentagram on the floor with like symbols, and the person matching the symbol has to stand on it. But then it falls through because the Grunkles don't get along, and they refuse to hold hands. I mean, I don't want to hold a six-fingered hand, but that's just me.
Well, that's because you've read Enoch, so you know not to trust them.
But it's just like, it's just so demonic and just so evil, and it's like, as I'm like rewatching some of it, as I'm watching reviews on YouTube, I'm just like, how was I okay watching it the first round? Like,
again, I think I'd enjoy it more if it wasn't a kids show. Like, that's what really gets to me. It's still pushing all kinds of things that I disagree with. But yeah, it's just weirder to me that like 6-year-old, like this was put in front of 6-year-olds during the daytime hours when their parents are at work. Exactly. I want to get back into Ford. So let's sum up the end of Weirdmageddon. So they break this spell. They send Cipher, I think, possesses who he thinks is Stanford, ends up being Stanley. And then they use a previous plot point in the show. They've got this mind erasing gun. A little bit of backstory on that. There's a cult that's behind the town that's erasing people's memories whenever they see cryptids and things like that, which is a pretty interesting plot point. But they use this mind erase gun on Stanley, and Mabel then tries to rehabilitate Stanley through showing him her scrapbook, and it's kind of this cute happy ending. But what happens to Bill Cipher in the end? Because I think that's the important thing that I want to get to.
Yeah. So what happens to Bill Cipher? It's weird because Stanley manages to beat him in his mind. And the biggest thing, all the clips that you'll see will be like Stanley like punching him right in his one eye and things shattering. And then he does some backwards talk, which is like that, like I said earlier, it's that one string that Alex left for himself that he could play on if he wanted to continue. But basically he's calling out, like trying to get like whatever last bit of maybe like mercy out of what's ever in charge of like their universe, to be able to come back. But he does like this whole like changing shape thing, and then he kind of just explodes, and then everything kind of just fades back to the way it's supposed to be in Gravity Falls.
Right.
Like there's no more like blood waterfalls or weird creatures running around.
And I think the very last shot of the last episode, correct me if I'm wrong, is a very quick flash, and it's a picture. And it's a picture of it's not a drawn picture, it's a real picture of a of a stone statue of Bill existing in our real world. So he is banished from the cartoon and then ends up in our real world. And I want to put a pin in that because we're going to come back to that, but it does end with that. So what I want to talk about is Ford and why that Alex Hirsch has never answered the question of why he drew Stanford with 6 fingers. This is never answered. There's no other characters with 6 fingers. There's theories out there stating, look, some characters have 4 fingers, which this is weird. And then some characters have 5 fingers, and there's no distinction or there's no like attention drawn to the fact that some characters have 4 and some characters have 5. I think Alex Hirsch tried to say that he's like, some just looked better when we drew them with 4 and some looked better when we drew them with 5. I've seen theories saying that it's showing a greater level of awakeness through having more fingers, and that the most awake character would be the character who is a blending of the supernatural and the human, which again, if you know the story of the Nephilim, when the angels came down and had sex with women and created these giant babies that had 6 fingers, like it's that blending of the two. So you could definitely make the case that there's that without it being said. But to go further into the idea of fallen angel demonic deities having sex with humans, there is a weird gay background love story going on that fans have noticed and pointed out that Alex Hirsch was able to slip past the censors. And I just want to watch this TikTok really quick that explains it, because I think they're right, and it just makes the case weird. And maybe the idea of him having 6 fingers as a reference to the Nephilim is the idea that he himself has a gay relationship with Bill Cipher. Let's check this out.
Did you know in Gravity Falls that the relationship between Stanford and Bill was a lot more intimate than we originally thought? And I know that the shipping community has been going absolutely crazy about Bill Ford, but they're not necessarily wrong. Because at the very end of the Book of Bill, we actually get the missing pages from the third journal, things that we have never seen before. And it's these pages that show the relationship between Ford and Bill. There are multiple moments where we see them have a deep emotional connection talking about their past, to the point where we actually see real, genuine guilt from Bill Cipher when he talks about how he destroyed his universe. Ford also refers to Bill Cipher as his muse and says how much he's enriched his life since meeting him. Heck, Bill Cipher remembered his birthday and also got him a present. And finally, when these two ended up breaking up, quote unquote, Bill Cipher went absolutely crazy, like an ex trying to get his man back. And when he realized that Ford wasn't coming back to him, he ended up at a pub to drink away his emotions. So yes, these two had a pretty intimate relationship.
Weird. Weird. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm just so tired of the gay agenda. I'm just so tired of like seeing it everywhere. And
what? Well, you also have to ask the question: why is the gay agenda always involve demons? You know what I mean? It's always like, you know how we can push forward the gay message is through shows where people have sex with demons. So it's always a twofold thing. I'm noticing.
Yeah. And also like why a weird triangle.
Yeah,
I should. Did you see that in the clip?
I did.
He ate and drank through his eyeball.
I did. I should point this out. Sometimes I forget that people are listening to this and not watching this. If you are listening to this, this is on rumble.com/realconspiracies. But if I didn't point this out, if you're not familiar with the show and you're curious about this episode anyway, Bill Cipher is a triangle. He is the all-seeing eye triangle on the back of the dollar bill. And that was intentional. So it was a clear reference to that. So I should have pointed that out earlier. But talking about clear references, I want to talk about the creator a little bit. And we'll come back to Bilford in a minute and that whole gay agenda. Yeah. But Alex Hirsch, people have accused him of hiding occult symbolism in his shows made for kids. And I think we've already kind of made that case, and we'll come back to some symbols in a minute. But he just says it, right? This is his tweet. He says, the rumors that I'm hiding occult symbols in my show are totally false. I'm not hiding them at all. They're in plain sight, dummies. And it's like, yeah.
But it sounds a lot like something Bill would say. Like once you see the series and you kind of learn how Bill Cipher talks, it's very demeaning. Right. It's very belittling. And he voices Bill.
Yes, he does.
Along with Grunkle Stand and a few other key characters in the show. But like, I don't know. Like,
well, I mean, in a lot of ways, Bill is Alex Hirsch's muse, and he says this in so many ways in interviews.
Yeah, and he just kind of loops around, like you said, he doesn't answer anything straight. Like this is probably the most appropriate answer he's had, the most like obvious,
straightforward answer he's had.
Yeah, straightforward. Yeah. Because it's like, I'm not hiding it. It's right here. And he's not denying it. He's telling you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, like throughout the show, everything that he posts, it's all about being in agreement.
Right.
And getting that consent.
Yeah, well, Bill Cipher has to have a handshake to possess people, to do things. He has to have that demonic agreement, right? Mm-hmm. I also want to talk about this. You said he doesn't give a lot of straightforward answers. I said that, and that's true. One of the few times he does kind of give more straightforward answers, though, is when he's speaking from something he calls his headcanon. And basically, the fans love talking about Alex Hirsch's headcanon, which is, this is the canon, this is the gospel truth about the show as I see it in my head, but it's not official because it's not approved by Disney. That's the way to read that, right? So whenever you read about his headcanon, this is him saying, this is how I intended it, this is what I mean in the show, but it doesn't come through the show in certain ways, maybe because of the censors. And we'll talk about the censors at Disney in just a moment. But I noticed this, and this bothers me a lot, first of all. Before we even get into Alex Hirsch's response, someone tweeted at him and said, a local church has a Gravity Falls knockoff VBS camp this year. And they literally do. It's called Summer Days. It's in the fonts of Gravity Falls. It's in the style of Gravity Falls. And it's just like, the church is so hungry for like, recognition and acceptance that they're like, you know what, let's take this demonic show and then just like be like, but we do demonic shows too at the church but you know, they're not demonic. And it's like, I don't know. There's something about that bothers me so much that there's a VBS camp, a vacation Bible school camp based on Gravity Falls. You can tell whoever created this didn't watch the show, maybe. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
So you haven't shown
like, would that bother you if you took your, would that bother you if you took your kids? Sorry, what?
I wouldn't let them go.
Right.
Like so kind of slightly off topic. There's reasons I wouldn't let them go. Because this show has the occult in it. Because of my bloodlines. I did a stream with Abby for the Illuminati, like the crochet.
The crocheting thing.
The naughty one. The crafts one. And I kind of touched based on my testimony and what I've been through. A lot of the people in Discord know as well, but like my mom is Hispanic. We still have relatives in Mexico who are practicing witches. A huge thing. Now, I don't have a huge knowledge at it, so don't go messaging me going like in-depth questions. I have surface knowledge. But one of the biggest things is they will try to claim any baby girls in the family line because witchcraft preys on women and trying to empower them and do all that. So we have that spiritual sensitivity. And that's why I stopped watching. Like I rewatched 3 episodes and then I stopped and I only watched like YouTube stuff. Because if I open, even by a crack, even just watching the episodes, I find that there's spiritual unrest in my house. Mm-hmm. I went through some inner healing and deliverance and broke off a lot of chains from witchcraft and stuff. And I want to protect as much as I can my kids from it.
Right.
So if I saw this, if my church did this, I would honestly talk to the people in charge. Like I would go to the head pastor, I would go to the youth pastor, and I would try to at least inform them of what that show's about and why we shouldn't be having that as a theme.
Right. And I think this is an important point to bring up for our Christian listeners is like everybody has their limits. And I think that for you specifically, for my wife is the same way. She's very sensitive to these things. She has a similar backstory to you in some ways. And I know you guys talk a lot. So, so like for her, this stuff is way too sensitive for her. For me, I don't feel that conviction in the same way, but I do feel the conviction to expose the evil. And that involves me having to watch a lot of this stuff. And I feel like God has given me a unique protection against these things in some ways where I can watch and expose them. And I am not suggesting anybody watches this show, by the way. But yes, I think that's a very important to recognize when this is going to be a spiritual pitfall for you or a stumbling block, and to just avoid it entirely. And I would not send my kids to something like this either. But to get back into Alex's headcanon, he replies to this tweet and he says, "Jokes on them, every character in Gravity Falls is a Satanist hashtag canon." And this is meant to his fans to be like, by the way, this is what I meant for these characters that are doing occult rituals in the woods and summoning demons. Hey, guess what? They are Satanists. And it's like, no crap, right? It's like, obviously they are, but just some confirmation from Alex Hirsch on that point. And why this didn't come through in the show is interesting because Disney had such a weird back and forth with Alex Hirsch. I almost brought up a video he posted, but it's long, so I'm not going to. I'm going to explain it. But he posted a video on his Twitter where he shows emails that Disney sent him and his responses. And it was things like, don't say poop head. It sounds too much like shithead, and we don't want that. And like they're censoring him in all these weird things. They at one point, they're like, there was a poster in a background of a scene that said, bottles will be spun. And Disney responded, they're like, we don't want to insinuate that teens are having makeout parties. And it's like, yeah, okay, Disney, I'm glad that you're paying enough attention to be like, you know what, this is for kids. Maybe we shouldn't have these things. Disney literally sent him a letter saying, please don't use the word Lucifer because Christians will be offended. And it's like, Disney, the show has children drawing pentagrams surrounded by candles, bringing demons through rifts and doing like, my whole point in this is like, I think that this show would have been more obvious and had more references and had more things in it had there not been the censors. But you also have to ask the question, why is Disney censoring the things I mentioned and then going, but 6-year-olds is okay to have demon summoning rituals? And you get where I'm going with this? Like, that's like, weird, right?
You're okay with like this triangle demon possessing these people. Yeah. But you can't spin the bottle. It doesn't exist. It's not there.
Right. So that's the weird thing with him and Disney, and he's railed against Disney.
With a lot of producers like that too. Like,
yeah,
he has like what was it? I think it was like Mario Brothers, a newer movie, gave like thanks to Alex for this little bit of input he had, but he was supposed to be a major part of that.
Right, he was.
And they had differences, and then he decided not to, but they still gave him a special thanks.
Right, so he had influence on that and on the new Spider-Verse movies and a couple other big kids movies. And again, you got to ask why someone like this is so interested in pushing these messages on children. And I want to come back to that, but here's one of the messages that he's adamant that he is most vocal about pushing on children. And he says, back when I made Gravity Falls, Disney forbade me from explicit LGBTQ plus representation. Apparently, the happiest place on earth meant straightness, but as of today, thanks to his ex-girlfriend, Dana Terrence, and the team are explicitly queer animated characters in Disney TV. And he brings up, what's this one called? The House of Owl House.
Owl House.
Yes, so
which is just witchcraft everywhere. They're like, yeah, we can do witches.
Well, you can't represent witchcraft without lesbianism. It's a synonym. Yeah. Witchcraft and lesbianism it's the same picture, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, basically, yeah.
So he's got that, and then another symbol that didn't really make its way into the show explicitly, at least, that I think would have made its way into the show, which maybe points towards why he's obsessed with pushing things on children, especially the gay agenda on children, is this weird tweet that he posted, and it is Bill Cipher, but he's a pizza. Right? Like, he's got a pizza in his back pocket. And
yeah, it's like he has it in his back pocket. I'm like, that's just...
It's the only way to read this symbol is Bill Cipher is hiding the cheese pizza, the CP, the child pornography, the link to the fact that there's something, some occult messaging here going on about children's sexuality. So is it with LGBTQ plus? I mean, does that mean that he's including pedophile in the plus? Is there, and I'm not accusing him of anything that I can't prove. I'm just saying it's freaking weird to want to push sexuality on 6-year-olds, and then you're posting weird pizza images and stuff like that.
Right. No, it's like there's no reason for it, and that's the thing. There's no reason for it, but they still want us to see it.
Right. But let's talk about the symbolism that is in the show a little bit more. We've got, again, we already pointed this out, but everywhere you look, there's triangles, there's all-seeing eyes, there's pentagrams. The final episode focuses around the final 3 episodes focuses around the number 13. The kids are about to turn 13. They turn 13 in the finale. And in 13, and the point of the finale actually lines up with this, why I bring it up. 13 in tarot can mean death, or it can mean the struggle period before ending a struggling period and into a new beginning. And they make so many references in these final 3 episodes. These kids could die, or they could make it through the summer and have a new beginning. So they've got this whole occult tarot reference with 13. I think it's important, at least. We talked about the vanishing symbol on the fez. You brought up there's 8 balls everywhere. I mean, Stan's cane has an 8 ball on it. In the opening scene, an 8 balls floating around a few different scenes. There's a monster with 8 balls for eyes.
And his name is 8 Balls.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah, I forgot that was his name.
Like, there's 2 intros. Mm-hmm. One is the normal one that's pretty much the same up till season 2.
Till the end of season 2, right? It's Weird Mageddon has its own intro.
Yeah, I think it was when the rift happened, and that's how he got into their dimension. But then it changes. So like I sent you 2 clips. I sent you the normal intro and then the changed one.
Yep.
First one, it's Dipper holding a candle, looking around in like this mine shaft. And then him like turning, seeing this skeleton that has horns on it. And then he's scared, so he tosses up the candle and it falls. In the reverse of that, when Weird Mageddon happens, instead of Dipper, it's what was probably that skeleton. It was 8 balls because he had the horns and he had a very similar facial structure to that skeleton. And then he has the candle and it comes up on Dipper's skeleton.
Right. Yeah. It's a reversed thing. Instead of the focus being on Dipper and Mabel, it's on Bill Cipher, and all the things are reversed and stuff like that. But you do have that. And you asked me if there's some weird occult concept behind the Magic 8 Ball. So I did a little bit of research on this. The Magic 8 Ball was invented by a man named Albert C. Carter. And his mother, Mary Carter, was a clairvoyant. And what she did that he grew up watching over and over again is she had this magic chalkboard, and she would put it in a box. She would put it in a sealed box and ask a question. And when she pulled it out of the box, it had writing on it. It would answer her questions. So she was doing demonic automatic writing, clairvoyance messaging, right? And he wanted to invent a toy that anyone could use, and he marketed this toy. I wasn't called a Magic 8 Ball first. I forgot what he went through a few different names, like the Psi tube or something like that. And because originally it was like a tube filled with liquid, and you would shake it, and a 20-sided die inside would have different things on it. Eventually he found a billiards company that wanted to help him market it, and they're like, well, if you make it in an 8 ball, then we can market our billiards company and give you the money to fund your divination toy for children. And his whole marketing behind this was, you can be a diviner too without being a clairvoyant. You can invoke spirits to answer questions without having to be a full clairvoyant. So the whole idea behind the Magic 8 Ball was always, here's a way to get kids into occult practices without there being any real harm. It's just a toy. It's just for kids. And it was always a divination object based on a real clairvoyance divination tool. So I think the show pushes that imagery because it's the same thing in a way, is it not? Is like, don't worry, it's just a cartoon. It's just for kids. It's about the occult, but it's not real. It doesn't have any real world consequences. And I'm going to make the case that it does in a minute. The other symbol that comes up a lot is 618. Did you notice that? It's on all over the place. 618 is a number that's repeated throughout the show.
No, I didn't.
It's on Stan's jumpsuit in prison. I can't even remember where all it's at. People who are familiar with the show.
If you noticed it, yeah.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And a lot of fans have talked about this. And it's not actually an occult number exactly. It's just Alex's birthday. So he's just using the idea that of Freemasonry, of hiding the numbers and telling the truth through numbers. He's just using it to point out his own birthday. So it's the same practice, but the references to his birthday here. One of the other things that references Twin Peaks in a way and also references the occult is the backwards messaging.
Yes.
So if you're familiar with,
there's a lot of it.
If you're familiar with backmasking, the idea they're putting messages on records, and that if you play the record backwards, you could hear the real message, which is a thing. I haven't done an episode on it yet, but it's a real thing. And he makes jokes about this. People start noticing it. And the first one, where it is a joke, is with Gideon, right? Gideon, this child psychic / huckster. Whenever he does them, they're a joke. So you hear him summoning Bill Cipher. And all he's saying, it sounds like he's speaking Latin. If you play it backwards, he's saying backwards. Saying backwards message.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
His are the silly, funny ones.
Yes. Another one he does, it's spooky spell if you play it backwards.
Spooky spells backwards.
Yep. The big one that left a big opening question, you said he left this open-ended for a season 3. And I would not doubt if we get a season 3 at some point for some reasons, is when Bill Cipher is finally defeated in Stan's mind and he's kind of banished. He says this message really fast, sounds like Latin again. If you play it backwards, he says, AXOLTL, my time has come to burn. I have spoke the ancient power that I may return.
Right.
which is creepy as all F. I guess the axolotl comes up in the Book of Bill, but it was a question for almost 9 years before the Book of Bill came out. And there was online theories of like, is there a cosmic axolotl in the sky that has all these powers? And basically the answer to that in the book is yes. There's a cosmic axolotl that's going to make Bill go through therapy before he can come back to our plane. But the interesting one here to talk about this becoming an AGR, which is an ARG, an augmented reality game, is the title theme. If you watch the title theme, when the last note kind of ends, it sounds like a whisper.
Yes.
Right? And if you hear it, you kind of like, I can't catch it. And you slow it down, you can't catch it. Well, somebody figured out that if you play it backwards, what it says is 3 letters back. And this is a reference to a certain type of cipher, and it's called the Caesar cipher, where you take a letter and you just go 3 letters before. So in the opening message of the show, there's a cryptogram that if you decode it using the Caesar cipher 3 letters back, it says Stan is not what he seems. This is another reference to Twin Peaks. The owls are not what they seem is the reference in Twin Peaks. That's the first instance of the show becoming, again, something outside of watching it. Now you're participating, right? Now you're participating in the game. You're decoding ciphers, and he just goes all out on this. And I don't want to do a whole episode on this because I read articles that are really long to go through every cipher and every episode and every video game and every book.
That's the thing, though. He made it so involved. Like, who hears that little whisper and then tries to like hone in on it?
Right.
And not only just hone in on it, they're like, let's play it backwards.
Right.
And like one said, welcome to Gravity Falls. And then certain ones will give you like every 12 episodes or so, like the cipher changes.
Yeah, he changes to an at-bash cipher at one point. He changes to a more difficult cipher at another point. And he's making people research ciphers. And this is very Freemasonic of like using ciphers and hidden messages and codes and things like that. I mean, this has all of it. And he makes his fans incredibly involved.
Yes.
And does this remind you of something that, I mean, I think you've seen this episode. I talked about this before, but this reminded me instantly of Ong's Hat. So I can't remember the name of the guy right now. I should have put it in my notes that created Ong's Hat, but his whole idea was to make an alternate reality game where he would show up to public places and he would have his friends play characters and people would find pamphlets and they would find things on message boards and they would download things to their computer and they would go through these ciphers and through these things, and he would augment this game. It was his idea to augment a game between magazines, the internet, before it was even the internet really, real world happenings, books, radio interviews, and people followed this for more than a decade, like solving puzzles and doing this and doing that. And if you know anything about, oh my gosh, I should have looked up this guy's name. If you know anything about Ong's Hat, though, you'll know that the guy is a ritual magician. He talks openly about being a ritual magician, and that his whole idea of creating an augmented reality game was to feed power into this thing and to kind of manifest Ong's Hat into reality in so many ways.
Right.
Also, there's this game. I said he goes into other places. There's a game called Rumble's Revenge. And again, there's too many things to talk about here. There's a million books. Some of them were not approved by Alex Hirsch. They were just created by Disney. But there's books, there's games, there's websites, there's spin-off shows, there's shorts, a lot of stuff to get into. But one of the most interesting ciphers that I found was in a game called Rumble's Revenge. And the cipher, if you decode it, reads this throughout the 12 parts of the show or the game, right? There's like 12 chapters. And it says, first one, I bet you wondered who I am. I bet you're wondering who I am. I don't give up answers easy. I know things, fascinating things. Your reality is a game to me, and I like games. Mischief is my middle name, but not my first. There are 6 hints I will give you. And then the 6 hints are, there's a secret society in Gravity Falls. The handyman knows more than you think. Gideon has been searching for something. What goes up is sure to come down. Dipper is playing with fire, and I will be returning to Gravity Falls. And each of these 12 clues has a capitalized letter. And if you put the capitalized letter together, it says, my name is Bill.
Right.
So they've got this creepy cipher demonic thing going on, again, between using the ciphers from the show in a game, in the books. It's pretty in depth, right?
Oh yeah. Like he goes like, and that's the thing, like you said, like he planned this from beginning to end. And in one interview, apparently he got this idea from like this thing that he had going with his friend, like sending each other like 5 different TV show ideas. And then like for some reason Gravity Falls pop up, and it's not the same storyline, but he got hooked on Gravity Falls. He really liked that name. And then he took it and ran with it in a different direction than he had with that supposed like origin story. But like once you get all of that together, like Gravity Falls about Dipper, his twin, and all of that, like to go even further and plan out these ciphers and these like little scavenger hunts and stuff, it's like, but what's the point? What are you trying to get at?
Well, this is where I'm going to make my case. What I think he's trying to do, originally what I thought he was trying to do is create a tulpa. So a tulpa is a being or a thought form that's created through spiritual practices and concentration. Basically, you manifest an imaginary friend. At least if you read or watch a lot of occult magicians on TikTok, which talk is the worst place. Don't go there. But they talk about a manifesting, and the way that some people talk about is, from a clinical perspective, you would call it self-induced multiple personality disorder, or maybe from a Christian perspective, you would call it self-induced demonic possession. So if you go onto the tulpa Reddit, it's all people saying like, oh yeah, I manifested a tulpa. Now my boyfriend dates me sometimes, and sometimes my tulpa takes over and he dates her. Or maybe my tulpa's a dude and I'm both, male and female, depending on the day. Like it goes right into the trans agenda, right? But like tulpas is a thing. And I'm like, well, tulpa is a thought form that exists in a person though. So maybe it's not a tulpa. And I think I've been using the word tulpa a little bit wrong. I've been using the concept, but what I really think that I'm trying to get at here is an egregore. So I looked into the concept of an egregore, and this is a non-physical entity or a thought form that is created by a group of people using collective thoughts and emotions. So I know in the past on my show, I've used the tulpa to explain that, and I guess I was using the wrong terminology, but they're the similar concept, except that I think the difference is the tulpa is more individual and the egregore is a thought form created from society. Right. And Mark Stavish, the author of Egregores, he wrote another definition for egregore. So egregore, the book is called Egregore is the occult entities that watch over human destiny. And he said an egregore is more than an autonomous entity composed of and influencing the thoughts of a group of people. It is also the home or conduit for a specific physical intelligence of a non-human nature, connecting the invisible dimensions with the material world in which we live. He says this, in fact, is the true source of power of the ancient cults and the religious magical practices. So, does that sound like Bill Cipher in so many ways?
It does, because I think I know where you're going to go with this one, but like, people are so obsessed with him.
I want to make the case they are trying to manifest him.
I think they are. Now, part of that is because in Journal 3, one like Easter egg that they have in the show is that part of it's written in invisible ink.
Right.
And one of the phrases is, Sixer's asleep, and I get to, now I'm in control. So basically, whenever Stanford is asleep, Bill has control over his body. Right. And somewhere, like, Alex did a similar post, like, he's asleep, and, like, he's letting Bill take control. His body.
Yeah. So the reason I brought up tulpa and egregore is because there is definite instances of Bill as a tulpa, and I'm going to point those out, but there's also a greater occurrence of an egregore, and I think it's both. But to further explain egregore, I just want to play a little bit of this video I found. It's called What Are Egregores? And this comes from Occult Studies on YouTube. It's just a minute long, but let's check this out.
In an interview with New Dawn magazine, Stavish and the editor explained, egregores are also created organically when people who are not necessarily connected in a formal group focus on the same ideal or image, like entertainment characters that go viral and become icons. Spiritual, occult, religious, political, and other groups with specific aims create egregores, using symbols and rituals to focus and draw upon the energy of individual members, believers, fans, participants to fuel it.
All right. So I want to make the case that he is using the individual fans and believers and their belief and practices to fuel an egregore. So the first thing that I want to point out is that Gravity Falls in and of itself has in a weird way manifested in our reality already. Yes. And this has been helped along by Google Maps. In fact, if you go to Google Maps and you look for Gravity Falls, you will find this place called the Oregon Vortex. And this is, even though Gravity Falls is a non-real place in our realm, the ideas behind Alex Hirsch is that there's, it's a multiverse, there's a million possibilities, and one possibility in one realm, Bill Cipher does really exist, and Gravity Falls does really exist, and it exists as a cartoon and everything, and that's really explicitly talked about in the Book of Bill. But this manifesting of Gravity Falls on our plane happens in this weird vortex, a real place that the creators of the show went to, along with a lot of other weird places in California and Oregon, to come up with ideas for the show and to come up with ideas for Gravity Falls. So you've already got this kind of pseudo manifestation of Gravity Falls on our plane. The end of the show that you talked about involved Bill getting turned into a statue and then coming to our world. And here is a picture of Alex Hirsch with the statue of Bill in the Oregon woods. And this took place in 2016. It was this thing called the Cipher hunt. And this is this international scavenger hunt. The goal was to find that real life statue. It was just a blip in the final scene of the last episode of Gravity Falls. And basically he uses ciphers and codes and clues, and people all around the world are working on this 24/7. And clues are showing up everywhere. They're showing up in Japan and Russia and all these things. It started in St. Petersburg, Russia, July 20th, 2016, and it concluded August 2nd, 2016 in a forest in Reedsport, Oregon. And that's where the statue was found. And just to add in a little bit weirder, pushing demonic influence on kids. This is a tweet that Alex posted after the statue was found. And he said, it's a picture of a baby in the woods at night being held up by its parent to shake the hand of Bill Cipher, which is in the show how you make a demonic covenant with Bill Cipher. And he says, a demon baby just shook Bill's hand. Bill's spirit now lives in you, child. That's so freaking beyond creepy, right? Oh, man. Really gets to me. Go ahead. I mean, it's wrong, right? It feels wrong to you as someone who recognizes the spiritual realm for its reality and for the harm that this is.
Yeah, and I know I pointed it out a lot. It's all about contracts. It's all about being in agreement, and it's about consent, even if it's without knowledge. Because
yes,
evil just it shows
even if you
you
think it's joking. Even if you think it's joking. One of my friends made this case on a show we did once. They said, maybe it was you even. I don't remember who said this, but it was basically the idea that you can't play with a Ouija board ironically. You're still giving consent. You might have said that to me one time. I'm just going to credit you with it.
I didn't phrase it that way, but
okay, maybe somebody else said it.
But we did talk about that because they're marketing Ouija boards to kids. There was one TikTok, and I should have sent it to you, but it's this mom saying, "Oh no, sweetie, you can't play with it. It's for 8 and up." And it said that. It does say that on the board. Yeah, that you can buy at Walmart, by the way, and Toys R Us and Kmart. Yeah. You can buy it for your kids. Have fun. No. And I sent you another tweet.
We'll bring that tweet up in a minute. I know which one you're talking about. So this is a tweet I want to show you, though. This person, Vi McCoy on Twitter, caught on to this, and this is what led me down this rabbit hole. So it says, Alex Hirsch accidentally creating a cultural tulpa in the form of a literal demon that is now being given form. This surely will have no goetic consequences. And it's just showing Bill has become in our world, in stained glass, in tattoos, in people's memories, in people's dreams, as I'll point out in a minute. But he's making the case that Bill is, in fact, a cultural tulpa that was created on purpose. And I think that we get the confirmation of this just this year, which is why it's perfect timing to do this, in the Book of Bill. So let's look at the Book of Bill. So this, I'll scroll back up here. This is the Book of Bill. It came out this year, I think July of this year, 2024.
The cover's even weird.
It's a grimoire, right? It's a demonic grimoire with a lock on it. And I think the backstory, I'm not going to read it. It's a 120 page book. I read through it last night, but basically it says that this was created on living human brain. This book is a grimoire created on living human brain because Bill is a sleep demon who can exist in the mind, who's trying to manifest himself physically. That is all throughout the book. So even the book's lore is saying this book is human flesh that I'm inhabiting, and I want to inhabit my own body outside of this flesh in your world. And
Which sounds like all of the Nephilim spirits. That's what they want to do.
Right. Yes, exactly. We got the 6-finger Nephilim stuff. So if we scroll up here, this is the missing pages, some of the missing pages from Journal 3 of Stan's journal. And, or no, I'm getting that wrong. I think that Stanford found this book. I'm just trying to summarize this really quick. And he's like, what is this? Is Bill Cipher really dead? And he goes through this whole thing. He talks about the book of Bill, and then he gives a warning. So right here in page 4, you as the reader get a warning. It says, do not turn its pages. Do not write your name. Do not believe a word. Signed, Stanford Pines. And if we just scroll to the very next page after he gives you the warning, right? This is the thing about the occult. This is the thing about these occult ritual magicians. This is the thing about Freemasonry, revelation of the method. The whole point is they have to tell you what they're doing, right? And then you have to, this is why when I say, oh, you think it's a joke, right? People take this book as just a book. It's just a joke, that it's not a magic ritual. But because they told you it is, and you chose to ignore the warning, they now have your consent. Because you believed it was a joke. That's why this thing's couched in kids' shows. It's why it's couched in music and silly things, right? And if you go to the very next page, you quite literally have a contract with the demon. This book's new master is, sign your name here. To summon, place your hand on the right page, clear your mind, and repeat these words. And it gives you words to repeat. So it's literally giving you the beginning of the summoning ritual, and you are signing an agreement with the demon right in the beginning of this book, right? Again, I want to point this out though. What people will say is this book is it's not marketed towards kids. Okay, we get that the first one was marketed towards kids who were about 6 years old. Then it went to Disney XD, marketed towards teenagers. Now this book is marketed towards adults. What I want to point out is the timeline here. First episode of Gravity Falls, was it February, June, July, whatever, 2012. Yeah, 2012, right?
Right.
12 years later, even if you were 6 when you watched Gravity Falls and you've spent 12 years being obsessed with Gravity Falls and falling in love with this demonic character Cipher Bill, you are now an adult. Everyone who watched Gravity Falls as a kid on TV is now an adult. So this is to engage kids in the occult, to teach them how to start deciphering occultic texts through ciphers and through the study of these things. And now it is the agreement, right? Now the kids have reached maturity, and now we're giving them an agreement. So we've got this agreement here on how to summon Bill. And if we come down to page 10, did I say page 10? Yeah. This is where Bill becomes a tulpa. And it says, in fact, I'm just going to read this page. So let's zoom up on this a little bit. It says, in fact, I'm better than fine because now I have you and there's a lot we can do together. Oh, you might feel silly about meeting me. After all, Bill Cipher is imaginary. You're real and I'm not, right? And then it says, but are you so sure about that? And it goes on to give this explanation, like, maybe I am real. Maybe I can manifest in your reality. Are you so sure? Let's get another agreement. This is the whole user agreement, right? So we've got the agreement at the beginning, sign your name, put your hand, start the summoning ritual. Now that you know that I can manifest, take Bill's deal. Yes, turn the page. No, turn to page 77. So you can skip to just the lore stuff, or you can go through the summoning ritual with Bill, and he sticks out his hand to shake it. Am I making too much of this, or am I making a point?
I don't think you are. I think because I had a similar feeling.
Right.
Like I sent you 2 different videos about this book, and the guy doing the review of it was just making lighthearted, like, oh, this is so fun. Look at this, look at that.
Right.
But there's a check in my spirit.
Yeah. I think discerning people should recognize this for what it is.
It's a contract.
It is a contract. And I'm going to keep making that case. If the contract wasn't clear enough, we come down here to page 12. Did I put page 12 in my notes? Yep, here, page 12. At the bottom right of page 12, it says, with that out of the way, all this book needs is some ink. Hey, can I borrow some of your blood? Just press your thumb here and I'll absorb some right into the page. You won't even notice it's gone. There you go. Ah, that feels good. I was going to bring this up later, but let's just bring this up now. There is no shortage of pictures of people on Reddit who have sliced their thumb and put the blood and the bloody fingerprint into this book. People are bought into the lore, are obsessed with Bill Cipher, and are feeding him thoughts, attention, ritual, and blood. As I pointed out, those are the 4 requirements to bring about a egregore, right? So we've got all 4 requirements of an egregore. And we've got an entire culture giving it at least thought, giving it at least love and attention. And now we've got a certain select amount of people giving it ritual and blood.
Yeah. And my big thing with that, because I didn't see that in the review. Mm-hmm. So, and I know you can tell by my body language, like I am very much bothered.
I know. Like, we didn't talk about this before the show. I'm bringing this to you for the first time, but yeah.
And y'all get my first reactions. But like, it just calls to mind when God says, life is in the blood.
Right.
Abel's blood.
Right.
Cried out. We're not supposed to eat blood because that's life. And then like to see that and to know like people are actually doing like actually pricking their finger, putting their actual blood on this. Like it makes me so sad to think that people are doing this and they think that I think part of them, like a portion of them probably don't think anything's going to happen, that life just goes on. But there's that group of people that really want him to exist.
They do. And I'll show those examples in a minute. Yeah, they do. And what's crazy is they know how evil he is. He's supposed to be the villain of the show. And I've made this case before. Look, not every time that a show or a movie shows a villain or a demon, it's representation, but it's not what's the word I'm looking for? It's not saying that it's okay, right? Like sometimes the villains are really evil. So representing them in a show does not mean that you're agreeing with them or making the case for them. Bill Cipher is a different case. Bill Cipher is beloved. Bill Cipher is tattooed on people. Bill Cipher has fan groups and communities. And just to show you what people are fan grouping over, this is a image in the picture. This is a page in the book 14 where Bill Cipher talks about eating babies. He says, a baby in a briefcase, you can eat both. And he's giving diet tips on eating babies, right? So we've got this whole pedivore thing going on, as if the pizza references and stuff like that weren't enough. He didn't act like Alex Hirsch didn't put the picture of Bill with the pizza. Instead, he just went straight for the pedivore thing. He just went like straight out, let's eat babies, right? Like that's right in there. If we come down to page 16, this is where he says, this is where he makes a further case that this is in fact an egregore, right? He says, it's time to tell you about my unholy powers. Like a potato that grew too close to Chernobyl, I've got eyes everywhere, and any symbol of me that you draw, scratch, spray paint, or burn into the human world creates a direct peephole from my reality to yours. The more I see, the more power grows. The more my power grows, the more fun we can have when we finally meet. Want to help? Put me somewhere no one would expect. And it's pictures of people carving Bill into things. There's actually a page. Oh, wait, I just saw this for the first time. Look at the bottom here. Pizza Bill.
Yeah.
There we go. Another reference there. Didn't see that till just now. So we've got that. We've got Bill telling you, hey, the more that you put me into the world, the more power I have, the more I become an egregore. And there's a page, I might find it here as I'm looking. I'm going to page 16 next. This is page 16. I'm going to page 68 next, so I'm going to skip over it. But there's a page in here somewhere that has tattoos of Bill. Here we go. Put me on your body. And it's all these tattoos of Bill. So give the egregore more eyes and ears in the real world, right?
Well, and then if you look at the top one, it's him with 6 arms.
Yep.
With the blue flames. So, and that kind of leads back to like 6 fingers, extra body parts. Like one of the articles you sent me was saying how in different religions, like Hinduism mostly, people with extra appendages, be it fingers, arms, whatever, they're seen as like a supernatural and they have superpowers.
Because they're Nephilim, because they worship Nephilim. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. And that just links it to it too.
Right. So through this book, we have the agreement stuff, we have the pedivore stuff, we have the egregore stuff. We go to 68, it just goes deeper into the egregore. And this is where Bill tells you his journey to become an egregore or a tulpa at very least. And he says he started in cartoons. He manifested from his world into cartoons because they were cute and innocent, and he was trying to gain a following, and his cartoon days didn't work. And then he went from there to music. He started putting himself in music, and that didn't work for him. And then he went from music to the computer, and that didn't work for him, right? And then from computers, he went to dolls. He tried to get your grandmother to buy a little tchotchke thing to put on her mantle to feed into the power that Bill Cipher needs to manifest, right? And the book makes all these cases that none of this worked. He tried it in cartoons. He tried it in music. This demon's been around for a long time, and he's been trying to manifest in our world. But if we go back to page 4, we get an answer to how he was finally able to manifest, or how he plans to manifest. This goes back to the very beginning, this warning. Stan says, some local teens think that Bill worship is edgy. And this is where we get the sign that Bill Cipher is catching on, not in music, not in your grandma's tchotchkes, not on the computer as a computer demon, but he found a way to manifest by getting kids to think he's edgy, to get them to tattoo them on his body, to create cults to him, to do weird magic rituals to him. I mean, I think that what this is saying is essentially this is how he's going to manifest. And if we look to where we think of edgy teens existing on the internet right now, I would think of Reddit, right? So obviously on Reddit, you get people who are sharing pictures of them pressing their blood into the book. I mean, this one goes on. He literally does another. He drips blood onto the tongue on the page. It says, "Feed me more blood." There's a couple of places in the book that ask for more blood. And this person's like, "Yep, did it every time. Signed the agreement, gave my blood. I'm all in on Bill." If we look at Gravity Falls Reddit pages, you'll find people talking about dreams they had of Bill Cipher. And I want to read a couple of these if that's all right with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
So this one says, so I had a dream about Bill Cipher last night. Last night I dreamed I was at work watching TV, one of those small older televisions with a built-in VHS player. Then Bill Cipher appeared and said something along the lines of, "Hey there, wow, we're almost at the end, aren't we? We sure had a lot of great times together. Let's take a look back on those times, shall we?" He pulled out a remote control and started playing old Gravity Falls episodes where he made an appearance. Dreamscapers, sock operas, Last Mabelcorn, etc. But some things were wrong. Colors were different. Some things were played out of order, and characters would say and do things that they didn't do in the show. I can't recall specifics, but the only thing I can recall clearly is Grunkle Stan flapping his hands and going tweet, tweet, tweet in a mocking fashion. It was rather benign at the time, but upon reflection, it's probably my worst nightmare of all that Gravity Falls finale turned out to be a clip show. So they're kind of making jokes about this. But if you just go through the comments, there are people saying, yeah, I had dreams about Bill Cipher last night too, or I've been trying to have dreams about Bill Cipher. I think there's one page here where this kid is saying, yeah, let me read this one. He says, I dreamt that I was at my school and I was trying to convince my friends that we should summon Bill Cipher. He's a really big hyperfixations for me. And he says, not a big deal. I've tried to do this before. So we get some spray paint and drew the Zodiac crinkle thing. And we said that summoning spell together. And he appeared. For some reason, I had the rift and I gave it to him. And then the nightmare part of this came into action. So he started the apocalypse, killed my friends, didn't thank me, and almost killed my best friend. And all of this was just so vivid. And as a normal person, I was scared and ran as fast as I could. And then I tried to wake up and I felt like I tried for weeks. I got many injuries. I could swear I felt them. I was horrified. I saw realistic corpses and blood. It felt so real. Bill was his usual self, but just more terrifying. It ended that me and my best friend went out to try to find food, and Bill found us, killed my best friend. And when I tell you, I was on my knees crying and praying for my life. It was so scary. I ended up being burnt alive. When I woke, I was sweating and on the verge of crying. I'm so convinced that he visited my nightmare. Anyways, don't summon Bill Cipher in a dream. And again, I think these people in the comments, some of these, I don't know exactly which ones, are saying that they want to have dreams of Bill Cipher. They've been trying to have dreams of Bill Cipher. There's mind tricks and rituals and things on Reddit. I'm not going to go through those, but there are people giving, here's how you summon Bill Cipher. Here's how you think about him. Here's how you create the tulpa. There's a page on Reddit called Tulpa, and a whole subsection of that is people saying, I created a Bill Cipher tulpa. And when I go to sleep, he comes and he dates my girlfriend and he does things in my body. This is my point, is Alex Hirsch did an ancient occult ritual through the show to create Bill Cipher to manifest in people's minds, to manifest in their dreams, and to become such an obsession that I think that people are really feeding into this character.
No, I agree, because like, why would you saw the show.
Yeah.
You saw how evil it was. And people don't know how absolutely horrific something is until it's right in front of their face. And that's the scary part. Like that one that had the dream where it killed. What were you expecting? Him to hold your hand, sing Kumbaya? Like what?
Well, exactly. They know what they're getting, but they think it's edgy and cool, and they do it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really sad. But my question goes back, though, because you said that Alex Hirsch says that he has created a tulpa of Bill himself, and that he. My question then is, am I looking at this wrong, or not wrong? But is there something deeper going on here? Is the page 4 in the Book of Bill, the edgy teen that's been pestered by a demon from long ago that thought it was edgy and cool and then decided to manifest it? Is it not talking about these kids on Reddit? Is it talking about Alex Hirsch himself? That's my final question, right? Like,
maybe both.
I think it's both, right? So I looked at this Time magazine article. This is the last thing, and then we can kind of wrap this up. But he says they ask Alex Hirsch, who's your favorite character in Gravity Falls? And he says, this is before season 2 comes out. So he says, in the penultimate episode of our first season, we introduced this villainous, mischievous triangle who sort of resembles the Eye of Providence on the back of the $1 bill. He's a pyramid with one eye and a bow tie named Bill. He's a character we conceived early on in the series that might be fun to sort of have a kind of jerk character who can pop in and out and screw things up for our main character. It seems funny to me to take the most ominous Illuminati-looking character and slap Mr. Peanut arms and legs onto him and throw him into the mix. It's something that's always struck me as hilarious. The amount of physical letters I've gotten in the mail and the amount of pictures on Twitter I've seen of people getting tattoos, yes, tattoos, of this goofy character has given me an affection for this odd thing, because whatever I find hilarious about it, clearly the warped children of America feel the same way.
The warped children of America.
Right. Who's warping them, Alex? That's my question. Who's warping them?
Yeah, there's just so much like right there that you can unpack. Like, we're warped. We've already taken God out of the school through prayer, and it's only getting worse. And people are spiritually hungry for something, and they're choosing this to fill that hunger. They're
choosing a sleep demon to fill the spiritual void, to become their friend, to live within them. They're not inviting in the Holy Spirit. They're inviting this unholy spirit, and they're doing so intentionally. Children on the playground are on Reddit talking about, man, I just want Bill Cipher to be real. So me and my friends draw pentagrams and circles and do incantation rituals. And guess what? This year a book came out that let me give my blood and gave me summoning rituals for Bill Cipher, and people are doing it. That's my point.
Yeah.
So, but it's an innocent kids show, and it's just a joke, and I'm part of the satanic panic, and I'm overreacting, and
yeah, we're just the crazy people.
We're just the crazy people. So, yeah, it was a pretty deep episode, honestly. I appreciate you, Jehssye, for not only coming to me with the idea, but for doing this, for doing the research with me, for having these conversations. I hope this opened some people's eyes. Not every episode of Conspiracy Pilled or Real Conspiracies is always a lot of super fun. I mean, because it does get dark at sometimes, but I hope we can have some laughs and learn some things along the way.
Like, you want to entertain people, but we also want to inform people as well.
Yeah, infotainment, right? I mean, that's what it is. Yeah. So, but thank you. I guess we talked before the show. If you guys like Jehssye and you want to get to know her, the best way is to come over to the Conspiracy Pill Discord. I will put a link in the description. We have a great community over there. We have a lot of fun. There's a lot of great people. Jehssye is the star of our Discord in so many ways, and a lot of fun.
I get so much.
I appreciate this so much. Thank you for doing this with me.
Of course. No. And like, I love it. I love being able to talk and like deep dive on this kind of stuff, because it's like, as much as I love my husband, he doesn't share some of the viewpoints on like conspiracy. He'll listen, but like to actually have people who see a different side of it and like have a full blown conversation on it, it's fun, and it's nice to like unload all the information that I have in my head with somebody who shares the viewpoints, and we have the same beliefs. Like, it's just nice to meet those people. And that's why I love Discord, because like with the prayers, just like everyday conversations, like without that support, it would have been a really rough like past year. So like just the support that you can get from the community you and Abby built is just amazing as well.
We've got so many great people over there, and they've been really supportive to all of us, to myself included, with things I went through this year with my job and everything. So thank you for that. Thank you for making it such a fun place. And thank you for being here on this episode.
No, I had fun. Thanks.
All right, guys, let me know in the comments what you would like to see covered next time. Let me know if you liked doing a series. I mean, it's a little different than a movie. Let me know if you liked when we get into the kids content. I definitely want to get into some more video game stuff. So leave your suggestions. And until next time, everyone, keep it real.